Philipp, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me on.
My goodness, I've wanted to have you on for a long time now, so it's finally happening. I mean, maybe can we set the stage? It's a big question. So I just want to start here with a big, complex question. But when people talk about quantum and this concept of quantum, what are we talking about? Maybe just to set the stage for what we're going to dig into.
That's a big task.
I know the whole episode could just be that, defining
Yeah,
quantum. But yeah, let's
yeah.
start there.
So we do not talk about and nor leverage quantum mechanics. That's for me a completely different topic because we work with the real deal. We don't work with theoretical rabbit holes, but we work with the actual energy. And
Mm-hmm.
this energy is actually found in the ether. Even though, you don't find many people talking about it anymore, other than, for example, Tesla, Nikola Tesla and several others. But it's going to have a renaissance because that's literally where this energy is. It's an energy layer that can be accessed by all of us in
Mm-hmm.
deep meditation, for example. And we found a way on how to vibrate the ether in a way that we could harness and concentrate natural pure quantum energy that we also find in each of our cells into physical objects. And that's pretty much what we're talking about, so that even things like quantum entanglement suddenly become real and are
Mm-hmm.
not any theoretical models anymore.
Got it. Okay, so a few things that I'd love to unpack there. It's just, I mean, maybe people have heard this, and for the average person out there that maybe is into wellness, maybe not, maybe they're skeptics, is that when we say we are made up of energy or we are energy or the world is energy, can you kind of demystify that so people know, hey, this isn't woo-woo theoretical. This is science. We just don't ever talk about it.
Yeah, so it's a very interesting time right now, actually, on Earth, because we somehow feel that rippling through humanity. And what's actually happening is that there's an awakening happening. And it sounds pretty big and so mysterious and all of that. It really is just our own awakening to our most fundamental truth. It's almost hilarious, actually, that most of humanity has completely forgotten what and who they are. We are not physical matter that just runs around. We are energy and frequency at core, and we have a physical body. And it's very important for this physical body to be well and to do well so that this energy can exist well in this reality. But that is the most fundamental truth. And we're just remembering that. And
Yeah.
some remember it earlier and some remember it a little later. And
Yeah.
whoever doesn't will disappear and come back and then realize it then. So that's pretty much how it works. On a scientific standpoint, everything has a frequency and vibrates in a frequency. And
Mm-hmm.
you can measure how energy has or frequencies have an effect on the human biofield or on the animal biofield or on the plant biofield because they all have biofields. And yeah, we're since what we're doing is for some people it's not tangible, right? We started very early on to say, well, look, we need to have our products tested and studied
Mm-hmm.
in all kinds of different ways with
Mm-hmm.
different testing methods, but also placebo controlled, so that you can see literally something is happening, even on a physical level, even if it interacts on an energetic level. So there's tons of science, and I don't want to, we'll talk about it, I'm sure, but that's pretty much what you can find. And then, if you think about it, there's also way over a thousand big peer-reviewed studies out there that show the negative effects of electromagnetic fields.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that is, I mean, while quite physical still, it's also a form of energy, right? It's not that, a cell phone just hits us in the face, right? It's not
Mm-hmm.
physical in that sense. It's a frequency that's coming, but we are interacting with it and it has an effect.
Yeah. So we're all, depending on how material something is or how immaterial, it just depends on the frequency in which it's resonating. Is that a fair way of putting it? And it's something like this table that I'm at, or like me, it's just depending on how physical something is on this plane is just determined by the vibration of the energy.
Yeah, that is absolutely correct. And then obviously there are then differences between the a living organism and just matter, because in the end of the day, everything is energy, everything is consciousness, but there's a difference between living energy and something that's, you could say that, this, for example, there's no life in there,
Yeah.
but
So
there's
this
still
box
energy
that
in
you
there.
have.
It's
Yeah.
sort of waiting energy. You could say it's kind of like waiting to be active, right?
Hmm.
It's a little bit gets a little bit tricky to explain these things,
Yeah.
but
So what I mean when you talk about like consciousness, sort of this big term, which science can't prove that. I mean, science hasn't proven these big why questions of consciousness, but quantum physics kind of attempts to talk about that. So I mean, what do we know now as far as science is concerned, if much at all, on the difference of what makes something a living conscious vibration versus a table or a chair?
I don't think we will ever be able to answer that because it just happens. That's really it, on a broader level. And I've been there in this state where you're connected with all of consciousness. And once you realize that, it's almost silly, the big problems that we're contemplating every day. And in the end of the day, it really there isn't even a huge purpose in all of that, other than to experience ourselves. That consciousness has a desire to experience itself
Mm-hmm.
in all the different ways that it is or may be possible, and in different ways, from all kinds of different perspectives, from infinite perspectives, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
It is so hard for the brain, though, to understand that, to even go there and to accept that something could be infinite, because what does that mean? Infinite and eternal. But in the end of the day, we're all infinite and eternal beings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that again, that takes us probably to a whole nother podcast to talk about that, because it's such a deep topic.
Mm-hmm.
But, but yeah, that's
Yeah.
really it. Consciousness made the decision to be alive in this body here in the here and now, right? So,
Yeah.
and I'm an aspect of this super consciousness, and so are you, and
Yeah.
it just happens, though.
Yeah, and you're right. It is, and these are the big why questions. Again, that science hasn't shown that, but it's enough when you look at these quantum physicists asking these big questions, and then I think of these big minds that humanity reveres, right? Like Albert Einstein or Carl Jung, and these guys that many, like the best scientists, the best minds started out as secular atheists probably, but the best minds come out on the other side to say we don't know anything. There's a larger creative force that we don't understand, and they talk about things like God and this sort of spiritual side. But and have you ever thought about that? Like I think of Einstein and his words about these topics, and Jung and these topics. They almost are like religious texts when you look at these scientists.
Yeah, God especially, right, is one of those words that has been so misused and misplaced in hundreds of years, right? That it's almost hard to even mention that word. But but to me, really, it is this super consciousness, and there isn't a God that is sitting somewhere or aside or outside of us or something like that. No, it's all God. That is the truth. And that's where I think those minds also understand that. And
Hmm.
then of course, if you're really going into the philosophy, into looking at these different realities, like why are we now in this reality and experiencing it this way? And is this, for example, a simulation, right? Or is it not a simulation? A lot of these great minds are saying, well, this is a simulation, but then there's others that say it's not a simulation. I can tell you it doesn't really matter. It is what it is, but you can certainly think of it as a simulation and get a purpose out of that, right? Because so what would that mean then? Then it means I'm a player, you're a player, and we get to just go through this reality and figure out how we
Hmm.
can thrive in this game, right?
Yeah.
And how do we not thrive is by low vibrational states. If we're in low vibrational states, we get sick. We don't invite prosperity or abundance into our lives, which is actually the core, the nature, the essence of what we are, and we struggle. And then we tend to then hang out with the wrong people and all of that, and everything kind of has this spiral downwards. What if we start to vibrate higher and we invite other things into our life? We thrive physically, mentally, energetically. We invite abundance into our lives, or whatever. Yeah, love, happiness, way more important.
Hmm.
So yeah, and in the end of the day, I don't think we need to figure out the exact
Hmm.
thing, why are we here and all of that, but just go do it, just realize that you are in control, at
Yeah.
least of your own life, and and try to make the best out of it, right? And
Hmm.
and realize that we are a biofield. That's for me the most important thing to understand. We brush our teeth in the morning, we take a shower in the morning, then we eat, we exercise, all this stuff, we take supplements, all great, that's perfect. But when we are a biofield, that should be the first thing that we should support. So let's support the biofield and take care of the physical body. And then we're really having a
Hmm.
holistic approach. And then life can only get better, whether it's a simulation or not. Right?
Yeah, I know. My 18-year-old son Solomon, who's been on the podcast before, we talk quite at length about simulation, life being a simulation or not, and it's interesting, like a kind of a cerebral conversation with someone that's interested in these things. But ultimately, it doesn't matter. I've heard some of these philosophers talk about like life on Earth is like we're in the mind of God, right? And we think as ourselves as separate things, but we're really all part of this larger thing. Call it a simulation, call it a matrix, whatever you want. But it can create this sort of divisive, egoic, sort of dopamine hit of just like pontificating about these things. But like what really matters is experiencing life and kind of raising our vibration. So, what does that mean? Like for someone, when you talked about lower frequencies or lower vibrations, what is that? Just being in a good mood? Is as simple as that? Like quit complaining? And how do we quantify that? We know instinctively negativity, hatred, intolerance are not good things, but you're translating it from like a just negative and not good. It doesn't make me feel good to this sort of energetic quality to it. So how do we? What's that translation? I guess between languages.
So I think Dr. David Hawkins' work can be referenced here now. So I don't know, about 20 years ago, he wrote the book Power versus Force, and also several other books, and he set up this consciousness scale where he determined that the low vibrational states, or maybe in the low hundreds, like anger, shame, guilt, those are all vibrational states that keep you also in these low vibrations. And then you move into higher vibrations. Even the level of reason isn't even still a very high level, but it's definitely higher than fear, than the level of unconditional love. You go into the consciousness level of joy, and then into the so-called enlightenment zone. And if you the higher you vibrate, the more you also invite that into your life, because that is actually how reality works. What I vibrate in, what I am feeling, um, that is what I'm calling into my life.
Mm-hmm.
That's what most people haven't understood.
Mm-hmm.
If I see these depressed people, deeply depressed people, that and they try to use their the mainstream approach of constantly just talking about the problems they have,
Yeah.
they stay there. They're not getting out of it, because you actually need to break that cycle, and do something different, so that you call in something different into your life. And so Hawkins framed that really nicely. And he actually, even though he used kinesiology, which I love kinesiology, I think it's great if people do it, that actually know how to do it. So a lot of people out there say, well, yeah, that's not very scientific. However, what he did was quite scientific, and they did thousands and thousands of tests, and it's really fascinating. So if you out there haven't read the book, or listened to the audiobook, it's worth doing that. And then you understand more of how this whole concept of vibration actually works, and how you become an attractor field for what you're vibrating. And that also then actually explains, when people tell you, well, if you want to change the world, change yourself, right? And it makes total sense, because that is how it is. If I want to see peace in the world, in my world,
Mm-hmm.
then I need to create peace within me, and I need to find the places where I'm not at peace with myself, or with whatever I'm
Mm-hmm.
seeing or witnessing. And then as I do that, suddenly that will also come into my life.
Yeah. So well said. It's like the hermetic concept, right? As above, so below, as within, so without. Like, what are you? Is that kind of what they were talking about, right?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, I think these two concepts go hand in hand.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
absolutely.
there was huge research done. That's I don't know when it was done, maybe 10, 20 years ago, in the Middle East, that they could send people into the Middle East even during a war, that vibrated completely in peace, and they went there with the understanding that as if peace already happened.
Mm-hmm.
And when there were enough people that they put there, and it was actually, I think, the square root of 1%. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, for 1 million people living in a city, that would be just 100 people. You would have to put 100 people in there that literally no peace has already happened. That's
Mm-hmm.
how they're acting. That is exactly what they're vibrating. Suddenly peace happens.
Wow.
And that is how powerful this is.
Mm-hmm.
Not only just for ourselves, but because we're all connected,
Mm-hmm.
this can ripple through.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why for broader humanity is also so important, right? So there's all these interesting games in this simulation or not simulation, to keep people in fear and in low vibrational states, right? Sick, fearful, and also
Divided at war,
divided,
if we're at war with
certainly.
each other. Yeah.
Yep, and also in shame, right? And guilt, right? You're guilty because of that, and you're causing climate change and all, right? I mean, it's all these things, and then we're vibrating in that, and since so many are vibrating in this, it just has a collective importance, somehow.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to break that cycle by
Mm-hmm.
vibrating differently, and and that's the way out, really.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not The way out is not to fight these things
Yeah.
like on this material level. It's just to raise our vibration and help others to raise their vibration.
Yeah, and you talked about this sort of, well, the world's messed up, and the world, how I'm just one person, but if it's one person, then one person, then one person, and it doesn't have to be everybody. Like you said, we're all these generators, these sort of small generators within a larger generator. That if you get a critical mass, sort of a tipping point of people having a different resonance frequency, it can shift humanity, right? That's what you were saying with that
Ex
one report.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
You use the phrase biofield. Um, what is that exactly for people that have never heard that term?
hmm Yeah, I mean that's our energy that we're vibrating. That's basically what we are. And
We
in
are a
this
biofield.
physical reality, that's we are vibrating. And like everything is vibrating somehow. Everything has a frequency, but that's really what we're vibrating, and that extends way beyond the physical body. So, the biofield is way bigger than that, and that is what we also can be really in touch with our own biofield, but we can also sense other people's biofields and energy, frankly, right?
Yeah.
And I think people relate to this example. You're walking into a restaurant, and then you can notice there's a table in the way back. You couldn't hear anything. Maybe there is not even any physical interaction right now, but you can sense um, there's tension at that table, right? There is tension. It's in the air, literally, but it's not physical. You feel it. And then on another table on the other side, there's love there because maybe it just two people met and they just fell in love a week ago, and you sense that, right? It's
Hmm.
about sensing and feeling these things, and that's how we can feel and sense our own energy also. We're so trapped in the physical senses of the
Hmm.
seeing and the touching and all of that, and even that we have lost to a large degree. So
Hmm.
I always encourage people to just start feeling again a little bit more every day.
Hmm. Hmm. It's their intuition, right? We're so numbed and distracted and sort of fragmented that we don't kind of connect to that sort of resonance, that intuition that we all have. And that's, in a sense, collecting with that larger quantum, right? I mean, it's we all, when we have that sort of deja vu that people have, or that sort of inner knowing, that still small voice, that is what we're talking. It's like a tiny glimpse into the quantum.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You talked about quantum entanglement. So, for people who have not heard of that, another big topic, but how would you describe it for someone who's never heard of it before?
Yeah, good question. So, first of all, in 2022, the Nobel Prize for Physics was awarded for work on quantum entanglement, and they were talking about entangling particles. There's, it's nice that that happened because it comes into the human consciousness that way, that even something like quantum entanglement exists. But
Hmm.
really, to me, it's not about particles, it's about energy because the a particle is always something physical, and it's never the last part, if you will. There's always energy, and you can literally entangle energies. To give you an example, so if one of our blocks, for example, we have these blocks and they are like quantum energy generators inside these blocks, and they work like magnets. If you have two magnets, then you have a force field at some point. You can feel it, right?
Hmm.
So same thing. It's just not magnetic. It's a quantum force field, and it's a multidimensional quantum space that then exists within these plates. And if you put two objects there, they get entangled. Even though you don't put them, you could put one here and one here, they're instantly completely entangled. Let's say a water glass, a glass with water, and a lemon. The frequency of the lemon will be in the water within, depending on what block it is, about half a minute, right? Could be even faster. You could have your favorite healing plant that you put in there and a silver coin, and then the vibration of that healing plant will be in the silver coin.
Wow.
That's quantum entanglement in a very almost local level, even though for the quantum field it's non-local. And we can, with our technology, and we've proven this um, over and over again, actually, that we can have quantum entanglement over distance. So, meaning we could take a picture of an animal that is not doing well and take that picture, which is a unique identifier of this specific animal.
Hmm.
Let's call it a dog, and put the picture inside the block, then the dog is literally in the field. It's not that the the energy is being sent to that dog, and that dog could be 1,000 miles away or 50 miles away. It literally does not matter. It's completely irrelevant how far. The dog is in the field. And if the dog then gets moved to another city, on the way there and in the new city, the dog will still be in the field. The dog will be in the field as long as the picture remains in there. That is also how quantum entanglement works and functions. And it's very interesting, the research we've done regarding that.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to talk about that. I mean, so you have these technologies, these tools, devices, however you word it. How, I guess, before we get into it and how it works, it is fascinating. How did you get in this space? I mean, I'd love to hear that backstory.
Yeah. One, before I go there, one very
Yeah.
important thing, not that someone just stops here because they have something to do, and then so with the work with the quantum entanglement and the blog, it's very important you always just put one person in there at a time or one animal at a time and never more than that, because if you put more in there you literally commingle the energies. Let's say you put yourself in there and a picture of an elephant, you're literally commingling the energies, and then you lose your autark biofield. You're constantly connected with another biofield, so that's important.
How
How
did
did
they? So, I mean, if someone can do that with your technology, is that what you're saying? Someone can do that now. So let's just say I did that. You gave this sort of warning. Now I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't want to commingle with an elephant. Like, what would happen if I did that? If I
so
did that, and how would I do that?
So, I mean, there's uh, different ways on how you could experience that, but interestingly, someone in our community at some point had forgotten, and had to put his picture in the blog, and felt for a few days weirdly deeply connected with his one dog. And but he has multiple dogs, and he loves his dogs, but almost as if he felt the whole time what the dog wanted, and he knew even before the dog came to beg for food that the dog wanted food. And then when he took his picture out, he saw underneath dog hair that he had forgotten to remove of this dog. And that's like one real life example
Wow.
on how this could play out, right? So in that case, that's not really a negative thing,
Yeah.
but you still don't want to be mixing up biofields of different people, especially not random ones. You can
Right.
do that with your wife, for example, if you both agree, and that can be quite
Yeah.
interesting, actually, and
Yeah.
positive also. But
I'm pretty sure that sounds like a good recipe for a good marriage. I need to ask my wife if she's up for this commingling of our
well,
quantum fields.
be aware it can bring up also stuff that let's say there's a couple that there's some things that are cooking and they haven't talked about it, right? That stuff could come up, which is ultimately a great thing, but it brings stuff to the surface also. So
So if I have the blocks, which we'll explain to the blocks for everybody. So I have them in my house. So if you're just saying that I put a picture of something or someone in one of the blocks, and then am I using another block for something, or is it just do you just need one
yeah,
block to do this?
well, so first of all, that's really just the last use case that you can use it for, which is a really cool use case. But
Yeah.
uh, don't think you have to apply quantum entanglement, in order for the block to be beneficial. With the block, you just put it in your home or office, and it harmonizes your whole space. It neutralizes the negative effects of any electromagnetic fields that we've been able to measure. It can structure water. It can
Hmm.
improve your food
Hmm.
energetically. It can improve your blood health and your blood flow. It increases ATP production, and it has been shown in randomized double-blind studies to also accelerate wound healing and cell recovery of human cells. among several other things. That's all something you can do with this.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can also do quantum entanglement. And if you wanted to do quantum entanglement, let's say you have, I don't know, an aunt in Europe that is doing bad, and you have an uncle in Chicago that is also doing bad, and you want to support them both at the same time, you indeed would need two blocks. But you can also, in that case, easier, you just sign up for our quantum upgrade, which is actually works on the principle of quantum entanglement. And we've built a massive system, actually three massive systems that always run in parallel in three different continents, that doesn't have the limitation of the commingling. It doesn't have the issue of commingling. So there, someone could be in the field, and you could also put your business, literally have a customized field for your pet, for your son, for whoever. So yeah,
Got
that's
it.
also possible.
Got it. And that's all done virtually, right? You don't have to have a physical device or product.
Yes, so the quantum upgrade is indeed completely virtual. It's your customized field for wherever you are, and you don't need a physical product for that at all. I mean, you do need a phone or a laptop to sign up, and you're, by the way, 100% in control. Like, it's not that you sign up and then you need to just wait and see what happens. No, you can actually, and that's the amazing thing with the quantum upgrade, you can determine what strength level of energy you want to have. You can have specific frequencies even booked in. You could pause it at any time. You could boost your energy level at any time. All these things, and you're 100% in control of that. Otherwise, it would be, maybe not such a good idea, but you're 100% in control.
Mm-hmm.
That's indeed virtual. And then Leela Quantum Tech has all these physical products that you can use for anything, you know, more local, but then also for what we talked about. Yeah.
Yeah, got it. So the virtual, I know that these things are hard to explain for people, but I mean, I really would I know people want to know, like for the sort of the virtual side of things, is it just the resonance of like how does that translate in a virtual on the virtual side of life?
What do you mean exactly?
Sorry, I'm not explaining it well. So if I'm, let's just say someone uploads like their business or they're putting their business on this technology,
Yep.
what constitutes the business for it to be? Is it just where they're at in the world, like the physical location of something?
Yep. Okay, great question. I understand now. So, there's a difference between a home or location, like a property, which could be a physical business. Let's say, I don't know, a restaurant on 123 Main Street, right? So that's a physical location, and you could place that literally into the field, and then this location is in the field. And you could maybe put the prosperity frequency on, and then it vibrates in prosperity, which basically ultimately makes it a magnet for prosperity, right? That's pretty much the principle on how that works. Um, if you put a business in there, let's say that the restaurant is called, um, I don't know, vegetarian palace, okay? Maybe they have 100 restaurants, right? So you could either place this one restaurant in there by the means of the address, or you take the whole business, and maybe Vegetarian Palace LLC is the overarching entity, right, that
Mm-hmm.
owns all of these. You can put that into the so-called fields for business,
Mm-hmm.
and a business isn't it is just a collection of energy also. It's
Mm-hmm.
just a collection of energy. Anything that has to do with that, it pretty much impacts that. And then so the business as a whole gets supported with the energy. But you wouldn't have a measurable field in the individual locations, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got it. All right. So the Leela quantum technology. So I have, if you could explain what I have on right now, I have the quantum blocks. Like what for people who have never seen this or heard this? What are we talking about here?
Yes. So what you're wearing, that's the so-called heel capsule.
for people?
And it's the capsule itself, it's made out of brass and it is charged with specific frequencies. There's some frequencies that are etheric that activate the self-healing powers, basically, but also molecular frequencies. Think about 80 molecular frequencies of the most important vitamins and minerals for the human body. So that information is vibrating in here. You have also these beads inside that no one can see because the capsule is closed, but there's titanium beads inside that are just charged with quantum energy, and that acts like a booster so that the information of these frequencies is in a field of maybe 2 meters, what's that, 6 feet, more or less. And that's where this information is then. And it has specific benefits, right? It first of all has the benefit that you, as a living organism, can leverage these frequencies at all times. It neutralizes the negative effects of EMF for the one that wears it. And yeah, you could even put it next to a glass of water and inform the water with it. So that's it, helps with HRV and helps with your blood. I mean, those are some of the nice
Yeah, and we'll
positive
talk
effects.
about. I want to talk about the microscopy and the placebo-controlled trials you have. We'll get to that. And then I have the quantum block. So, if you could describe what they look like for people that haven't seen them, and then how are those different?
Yes, so that's the ultimate extension of our own technology, I would say the blocks are, and we have different types, a smaller travel block, infinity block, and then a large grand block. And so what they always have is they have 1 or 3 plates on the top
Mm-hmm.
and 1 or 3 plates on the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And that is because it needs to create this multidimensional quantum space inside. So they're literally like quantum energy generators. So as soon as you assemble them, there is this force field, and with that you have the possibility to do a lot more things. You can literally structure water. So the Emoto Institute, for example, in Japan, has found that our blocks can optimize water faster than any other method they'd ever seen before, and in a significant way, and basically make the water primal. You have primal spring water on an energetic level. It doesn't filter out anything, so don't take Mississippi River and then put it in and drink it. That may not be the best idea. And yeah, you have all these positive effects, right? It has a radius. So the blocks, while they're maybe just 8 by 8 by 8 inches, as an example, they have a big field around them, and within that whole field and radius, it harmonizes electromagnetic fields and it interacts positively with the human cells. So it has this uplifting effect that you feel energetically and
Mm-hmm.
physically. You can literally measure uh, effects with all kinds of different testing methods.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. The testing methods you've done. There's many. You mentioned the Emoto Institute. I've seen this dark field microscopy studies. Like, what are, like, would you say, the biggest studies? Maybe the most that the academic mind would be the most impressed by. Let's start there. For people that are maybe like, what are they even talking about? Like, what's the evidence point to?
What I'm most excited about personally are the dark field microscopy studies. Even though, especially in the US, dark field microscopy isn't mainstream at all, because about 20 years ago, they started to charge practitioners a $100,000 per year license fee in order to use it as a diagnostic tool. And that's how things then quietly go away
Hmm.
over time. That's why Americans don't know much about it. It's the best method to visualize your blood and to look in real time what is actually going on with your blood, because it's not a model, it's not theory, it's literally you can see under the microscope in a magnified and illuminated way how do your red blood cells look like? Do I have clotting? Do I not have clotting? Do I have parasites in there? Do I have white blood cell activity and motility, or do I not? And then I can introduce changes. Let's say I'm in a Wi-Fi free environment, then I can turn on Wi-Fi. What happens? How does the blood react? So it's literally right there. It is amazing. And we had done these before and after tests at first and found amazing results. That was done by a clinic in Austria. Then we introduced that to Dr. Beverly Rubik in the US, who's in this field, probably the number one researcher in the US, definitely top three. And she said, well, very encouraging results, but with just before and after testing, it doesn't tell me enough because this could be still random, right? And I said, oh, so okay, what does it take? What needs to happen? She said, well, you have to have a really placebo-controlled study, right? And that was the moment where we said, okay, everything we're doing, we should move towards placebo-controlled mechanisms, right? And and
Hmm.
and and she then actually she didn't think our technology could do what we thought it would do, and and then she ran this study, sham controlled, right, with the sham device, placebo controlled, blinded, randomized. And then she called me up, and after that first initial pilot study, she was like, "Oh my God, you have the solution. It really works. This is crazy. This
It's
helps
amazing.
with, this big blood clotting problem we have nowadays and all of that." And she's done many of those studies by now. So you see that within literally minutes, you can reverse stage one and stage two of blood clotting. The blood looks more oxygenated.
Hmm.
We have now, the Base Institute has now shown that parasitic load in the blood significantly decreases.
Hmm.
And not only that, the environment for parasites, for the harmful parasites in the blood is is getting better. Is so the environment is getting so good on a vibratory level and everything they can measure in the blood that the parasites start to go away.
Hmm.
That is pretty much what's happening. The white blood cell activity, which is an important part of the immune system, uh, the white blood cells are activated again, and they tend to get paralyzed by Wi-Fi, for example, and 5G. So that's also something that was shown. That's for me personally so important because we
Hmm.
have the blood everywhere, and we wanted to have good blood flow and good health of blood. But then I think for the scientists, probably the studies in regards to ATP production and cell recovery slash wound healing are probably the most interesting. They were also randomized and double blind, done by Dr. Robert Sheev at the University of Tulsa. And the ATP production showed another one actually who didn't think that our technology would do anything. He said, "Yeah, I can do these studies, but I mean, yeah, how's this going to work, right? It's just energy. I'm not infusing anything." And then it was clear there was a 20 to 29% increase in ATP production in all the treated cells. And so he did this study three times because after the first time he said, this really works. Then he said, okay, it was statistically significant, but I need to do it a second time to bring my other part on board that is still having doubts. Same thing happened. Then he said, okay, so now I'm doing it a third time just to protect my butt when I publish this, that and my name is behind this, that I've done it three times,
Right,
what do you
right.
want? Right. So that's what he did. Then after that, we asked him, okay, could you also run a study in regards to wound healing, cell
Hmm.
recovery? And he said,
Hmm.
sure, yeah, you can scratch cells with a laser or mechanically, and you take a control group again with millions of cells, hundreds of thousands of cell wells, and then you have a treated group. And so he also ran that study, and yeah, what happened, he did it five times this study, and it was shown to have a 46 to 100% acceleration in wound healing. So that
Amazing.
means that the damaged cells that were treated basically recovered 46 to 100% faster than all the other cells.
Amazing, man. This is amazing stuff. I've read the studies. I've always been such a fan of yours. I've never told you this, but from the sidelines of what you've been doing for a long time now, and these studies just keep showing the same thing. And science is catching up with this energy medicine, right? I mean, we're just because our arrogant, hubris-ridden minds of modernity doesn't understand things doesn't make it not true. But now science is catching up with this, these energy medicine as a whole. So, all right, the you mentioned HRV. What's the data show there as far as improving HRV?
I'm glad you asked, and you and I didn't talk beforehand, but there's new work out there. So first of all, there was the EGIF Institute in Europe. It's the largest independent EMF research and testing institute in Europe, and they had done an HRV study actually with the Heal capsule, and they found that EMFs negatively influence your HRV, and in 100% of the cases where there were negative effects visible, the Heal capsule neutralized all of these negative effects already within minutes, actually. And then on top of that, the longer people wore it, the better it worked. So the HRV obviously is an indicator how good the autonomic nervous system functions and
Mm-hmm.
how well you are at balance there. And now we were contacted about 5 months ago by an institute called Reputable Health. And they apparently work with thousands of women in regards to women's health and fertility. And they came to us and said, so can your technology help with fertility? We've heard so many great things about it. I told them, well, I can only assume so, but I don't have any data. We've always wanted to run some research, but we don't have the capabilities. And they said, yeah, but we do this all the time. We could run a study and we would love to test this. And I said, okay, as long as you set it all up and we don't have to do anything other than to provide the tech, we're fine with that. So long story short, 26 women were in this pilot study. There's going to be now even larger with over 100 women that will be a follow-up, but 26 women completed multiple tests and used then our technology, and they showed a significant improvement across the board in all markers, and even they were also surveyed on top of that. And one of the markers was the HRV, and
Mm.
it improved across the board. And the institute is super happy with the results, and they're like, this is awesome, and so they want to publish it. That's why it's not on our website yet, so we'll go through the regular publishing process there. But yeah, it does have a positive effect apparently.
Right. And the for people that don't know, these are things that we quantify. Well, obviously, we look at blood biomarkers too, and HRV when it comes to supporting vagal tone and supporting that parasympathetic. Most people have that nervous system dysregulation. HRV is one easier metric that we have available now that you can see improvement, which this technology does that. I know when I try to describe this to telehealth patients, they will typically the questions will be, well, is it the material and is it a magnet? Can you kind of dispel those myths about sort of the material used, like that's how it's working, or is it some sort of magnetism and that's how it's working?
Yeah. No, it's not magnetism at all. There's no magnets built into it, actually on purpose, because magnets would actually destabilize the field. But if you look at these blocks, it has the same principle of creating a force field that magnets also do, right? Because at some point when you have these plates aligned, there is a quantum force field basically, or a quantum space. That's the only thing that's close. And then um, the material itself doesn't do anything. That's, for example, what happens in these sham-controlled studies, let's say by Dr. Rubik. She gets a block that is infused with our tech, and then she gets one block that looks exactly the same for the eyes, but it's not infused. And there's a huge difference, right? I mean, it's a humongous difference. You still have a slight placebo effect in the sham device usually, but
Mm-hmm.
then the effect of the real device is like that. So it's
Mm-hmm.
undeniable. And so But the material is somehow important though still because it needs to hold and transmit quantum energy very well. So gold would probably be the best material for a block. That would be amazing to have a gold block. It's just too expensive for us to have it in the warehouse and for people to buy. Silver would be probably another good metal. And then, what we use is gold and aluminum, which we found to be really awesome. It's not so heavy like brass, for example, can be shipped well, and it really does a really great job of transporting the energy. So you couldn't use plastic, you couldn't use glass, you couldn't use like linen fabrics, right? So the material is important, but by itself it doesn't do anything.
Yeah, got it. So the material matters because based on its ability to conduct and hold the energy. It's not inherent. It's not like the material itself that's conducting that's producing the energy, I guess.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. All right. So I mean, guess if it's not the magnetism, if it's not the material inherently, like how would you describe as how is it working for those people that are still like, yeah, I hear the studies, I'm excited. What's happening though? What's the mechanism of
Yeah.
action?
Yeah. So I mean the plates are infused with pure natural super concentrated quantum energy. And then as you align the plates, so like you do with magnets, you create this constantly revolving dynamic quantum energy space. That's how it works.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you deassemble this stuff, it also doesn't work anymore. You still have charged plates, but it can't work. It's like
Mm-hmm.
having two magnets and one you throw to the neighbor. Yeah, I mean, you have no magnetic field, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you need to put them again in alignment somehow in order to have a magnetic force field. That's pretty much how it works.
Okay. How did you stumble upon this? Like this exact, I guess yeah. How did you, this is very specific field of energy medicine. How did you get here?
Yep. I used to be in corporate Europe and in corporate America. I was actually, interestingly, vice president at T-Mobile
Okay.
for several years, running 14 countries in Europe and also at T-Mobile US. So I know the electromagnetic field topic from both sides. And in 2016, I got out of corporate in order to just do what was my own calling. And throughout my life, I had gotten into the passion of biohacking, bioenergy hacking, because my wife, who I'm now separated from, but she had been diagnosed with chronic Lyme disease.
Mm.
And doctors had told her, yeah, you can't do anything with it. You'll just have it until you die at some point, right?
Mm.
And we wouldn't accept that. And to me, it was the spark to always find the next best stuff for her. And I found my passion in this. And then at some point, I bumped into a couple of companies that were doing something with quantum energy, and I realized they're not really doing a good job. They're just using a tiny little bit of quantum energy, but then a lot of electricity or magnetism, which destabilizes the field and causes stress to the human body. And I said, well, what if you did this right? Wouldn't this be amazing? You could have products that can help people 24/7 on an energetic level, and you can combine it with frequencies and do this and do that. And that was sort of the vision. And then one thing I haven't said yet is that in the early 2000s, I started to get into energy work and I went through shamanic workshops, got trained in various energy healing techniques, past life regression work, all of that. Suddenly that came in handy because at that time I wanted to always find the best teachers I could find, the people that could really move the needle, not like some Reiki dude across the street. I'm not discrediting the Reiki dude across the street, by the way. Amazing work that they can do, but there's different levels, right? And so I kind of assembled a team, if you will, and then we cracked the nut of this and developed these products.
Mhm.
That's really how that happened.
Amazing. So this is like energy medicine technology, for sure. All right. And I could keep talking to you, my friend, but we're running out of time. I want to be mindful of that. But before we go, the podcast, it's called The Art of Being Well. At the end of every episode, we have your art of being well. What is the worst tasting healthy food that you eat? It tastes disgusting. You don't do it for the taste. You do it because of some health benefit. Do you have a food that checks those boxes?
The worst tasting food. Oh my God, how you catch me off guard.
You don't always ask these answer these type of questions on podcasts, do you? But here you do.
Yeah, well, maybe it's certain leafy greens, like I don't know, maybe a celery juice.
I've been hearing that a lot lately from guests. Celery juice is the thing. Yeah, you're right. It's not done for taste. It can. I'm sure it's an acquired taste. Some people grow to like it, but for sure. What is a place you've never been to that's on your bucket list?
Mauritius
Ah, I
in Africa.
Yes, I had a telehealth patient there of all places the other week. I'm like, I want to travel. I want to go there. But yeah, it's an obscure place. But beautiful, beautiful for sure. What is somewhere you have been to that should be on other people's bucket list?
Costa Rica,
Nice. Any
especially
place?
in the Pacific side.
Pacific side. Okay. Amazing. What is a book that you've read? It could be fiction or nonfiction. I'm just getting this running Art of Being Well book club, but what should we add to the list?
Power versus Force by Dr. David Hawkins. And soon my book. And then hopefully at some point soon after, um, it'll be a continued work of Dr. David Hawkins' book Power versus Force because a lot of things have shifted and some of those things now have actually evolved. And I think it needs a work now that looks at that from a current perspective.
I love it. When's your book come out? Is there a date yet?
There's no date yet, so I
Okay.
actually don't know. I can't even promise, but it'll be in the first 6 months of next year.
Okay. Well, we will have you back when it comes back. You have to whenever the book comes out, you have to come back on the show for sure.
Sounds awesome.
All right, my friend. Where do people go to learn more about the things we talked about and the amazing work that you're doing?
Yep. So leelaq.com, leelaq.com. That's for everything with the physical products. Then there's quantumupgrade.io. That's for the virtual, where you can even get a free trial and just test it for yourself. And for both of those, if you're interested in just learning a little bit more, maybe talking with actual users or customers, we have Telegram groups. And on the website, you would look for the Telegram icon because those groups are private because we don't want any bots and people that are not interested in the topic. And through there, you can get into the group and listen in. It's high vibe, great communities, awesome people, and just ask your questions there that you may have, and you may like that. So
Amazing, Philip. Thanks so much for coming on the pod.
thanks so much for having me on. That was great.